Namaste. Karnataka Sangeetam, as I mentioned in the panel discussion, when we think about Karnataka Sangeetam, what takes Vishwarupam in our mind is the music of the musical trinity, Sri Tyagaraja, Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar and Sri Shyama Sastri. They lived about little over 200 years ago, and they gave us a wealth of compositions, and they expanded the scope of music by introducing several new ragas, and also took traditional ragas and expanded the scope of those ragas by giving us rich compositions that explored the different contours of the raga. All three of them were great bhaktas, and their bhakti was it was different from one another. If you look at Shyama Sastri, his bhakti was, he always sang about the Divine Mother, and he was a child talking to Divine Mother, praying for her grace, and sometimes it was a very personal conversation. And Dikshitar, his compositions were in Sanskrit. The compositions were a little bit more formal. There was a lot of description of the deity. There were a lot of compositions of Dikshitar were composed at different shrines. So there was a reference to the Sthala Purana. Dikshitar was also a very mystic, so there was a lot of hidden meaning that you need somebody with great Bhasha Jnana to explain to you. Tyagaraja, his bhakti covered the entire gamut. We had Dikshitar like descriptive compositions where he brought before us the glory of Sri Rama and other deities that he sang about. And there was a lot of personal, for him, Rama was his friend, philosopher and guide throughout his life. And he has many compositions where he has a conversation with Rama. You promised me several years ago you are going to do this, but you are not doing it, and that kind of approach. And also a lot of anecdotes from Puranas, Ramayanam. So Tyagaraja's compositions cover a wide range in both mostly in Telugu and quite a few in Sanskritam also. Now, granted, Tyagaraja Kritis, Dikshita Kritis, they've all been embellished over time with Sangatis, Chitraswarams by the Sishya Parampara. Now, not everybody in the Sishya Parampara was necessarily great bhaktas, like these great souls. However, they were acted as conduit. They conveyed the bhakti of Tyagaraja by continuing the tradition, the Patantaram, teaching, enhancing, And they were also kind of, they realized that nothing can be static. Music has to grow. And that is the beauty of Carnatic music, where we have this seemingly two different forces pulling in different directions. One is adherence to tradition, the discipline. Often when you have a conversation with those who are not into Carnatic music, they will typically describe it as, oh, you have so many rules, right? But on the other hand, you have the other dimension where there is unfettered imagination and creativity. So I was just thinking about, when we think about Raga and when we talk about spirituality, in both cases, there is this dimension of discipline and focus. A spiritual person is not somebody who is drawn very easily by the worldly pleasures, and there is this discipline. At the same time, a spiritual person is also very open-minded. They are always exploring, expanding, not rigid. So likewise, a raga, it is driven by underlying grammar. Okay? But when it comes to expansion, there is a whole manodharmam aspect of music where you have the opportunity to elaborate that raga. Of course, some more than the others. So, what I would like to do is present a few compositions where, when we talk about music and spirituality, music and bhakti, in all cultures, music has been used as a vehicle for devotion. Okay, they say music started as folk music, where people sang when they were working hard in the fields to feel, to mitigate the pain. We also have, even in our Vedic, we say music started from Samaveda. Okay, Samaveda, as you know, is chanted musically compared to as opposed to the other Vedas. And so music as a vehicle for devotion is fairly universal, but in Carnatic music, the music itself is worshipped. Tyagaraja has compositions where he talks about Nadopasana, and music is used as a metaphor for the divine. So I would like to sing a couple of compositions of Tyagaraja under the broader umbrella of Nadopasana. In this composition, Tyagaraja refers to how the swaras came out of the 5 heads of Lord Shiva. Nada tanumanisha Shankaram, Nada tanumanisha Shankaram, Nada tanumanisha Shankaram, Namami me Manasa Sirasa, Nada tanumanisha Shankaram, Namami me Manasa Sirasa, Nada tanumanisha. Modakara nigamotama Samaveda saram modakara nigamotama samaveda saram varam varam samaveda saram varam varam nada tanumaniṣam sankaram namami me manasa sirasa nada tanumaniṣam satyojatadi panchavatraja sarigamapadani varasaptaswara satyojatadi panchavatraja sarigamapadani varasaptaswara vidyalolam vitalita-kalam vidyalolam vitalita-kalam vimala-hridaya tyagaraja palam nada tanumaniṣam sankaram namami me manasa sirasa nada tanumaniṣam. That was in the Ragam Siddharanjani. It is no different from Karahara Priya except that it doesn't go beyond the Nishadam. Sarika Mapadani Nidapamagarisa. It's as though Tyagaraja intentionally chose this raga because he didn't, he wanted to talk about how the seven swaras came into the world, and he wanted to stop with the Nishadam. In this next Kruti, Tyagaraja, he describes his Ishta Devata, Rama, as Rama was he was a human Kriti walking around. Mahavishnu took Rama Avataram as a human being, and this he thinks of, he uses wonderful metaphors of musical ideas with different aspects of Rama, his Kodandam and his bows and arrows. Nada sudarasam bilanu nada sudarasam bilanu nada sudarasam bilanu nada sudarasam bilanu narakritiya ye nada sudarasam bilanu narakriti yaye pranavanada sudarasam bilanu narakriti yaye pranavanada sudarasam bilanu narakriti yaye. Veda Purana Gama Shastra Shastra Veda Purana Shastra Adulakadara Mainanada Sudarasam Veda Purana Shastra Adulakadara Mainanada Sudarasam Villanu Nara Kridiyaye Pranavanada Sudarasam Vilanu Swaramularuno Gantalu Swaramularuno Gantalu Vararagamu Kodardamu Swaramularuno Gantalu Vararagamu Kodardamu Duranaya Desyamu Trigunamu Duranaya Desyamu Trigunamu Niratagati Sarabulura Duranaya Desyamu Trigunamu Niratagati Sarabulura Sarasa Sangati Sandarpamu Sarasa Sangati Sandarpamugala Iramulura Sarasa Sangati Sandarpamugala Iramulura Darabhajana Bhagyamura Darabhajana Bhagyamura Tyaga Raju Sevinchunada Sudarasam Vilanu Nara Kridiyaye Pranavanada Sudarasam Vilanu This he says the 7 swaras, Sapta swaras are like the bells attached to Rama's Kodandam, and Duranaya Desyam. These are the 3 aspects of music, how you use to embellish, show the variations in music. He ties them to the knots on the Kodandam, and the Gati. He uses the metaphor for the arrows, and he says Sangati is how Rama used the appropriate words, appropriate approach. I think there is a reference to the Sarasa Samadana Vedananda Chatura. Rama uses different approaches to make sure Ravana, first he starts, pleading to him, but when that did fail, when that didn't work, he was willing to give Ayodhya to Ravana. So Sarasa Sangati, Sandarpam. Because if you think about musically, what is a Sangati? Sangati is basically the same line, sung a little differently, and as the Sangati progresses, it starts from simple to complex. So, you can say that sometimes simply asking for something might work. Sometimes you have to say it with emphasis. So, I kind of, when I talk to younger kids about Sangatis, I say, sometimes you want your mom to give you some candy. You say, "Mom, give me candy." "Mom, give me candy." "Mom, please give me some candy." How it varies. So that is what is Vatapi Ganapatim Bacheham Vatapi Ganapatim. So, Sarasa Sangari Sandarbha Mugala Eramudura. Of course, I used a very simple analogy, but Tyagaraja, of course, has had something great in mind. I was also going to sing Mokshamukhalata in the Ragam Saramati, but I think in the interest of time, I would like to, I have to mention other composers. Now, I would like to kind of go a little bit into history. The musical trinity, with that wealth of compositions, lived about 250 years ago. But then we talk about our music having roots in Samaveda, and then Natya Shastra, Bharata's Natya Shastra, which is 1st century, correct? 2nd century. And for me, the moment it goes beyond, before 9th or 10th century, then everything blends into, it's old. So, interestingly, in the Tamil history, in Tolkapiyam, which is, I believe, 2nd century before Common Era, 2nd or 3rd century before Common Era, although it is a grammar, treatise in grammar, there's also a lot of mention of society. So, the ancient Tamil society, they had divided the landscape into 5 different types. Kurinji, Mullai, Marudam, Neidal, Palai. Mountain and forest and desert, or more cultivable land and different types landscapes. And for each type of a landscape, they had identified a pun. Pun can be thought of as a predecessor to a raga. They had identified a pun. They had identified different deities. Okay, Murugan was for the Kurinji, and so different. So there was the connection between music and music as a way to pray. That apart, a more formal connection was specified in what was considered more of a grammar. Tolkapiyam was basically, it was laying out the rules. In that they say, for this type of landscape, this is the pun you have to use. So how well it was adhered to, whether, that apart, I'm just drawing attention to the fact that there was this formal tie-up between place of, who you worship and what musical form you used. And then we fast forward to the 6th, 7th century. Devaram has got many references to music. Not just music is something that pleases the god, but also references to swaras, which the Tamil names were different. And I wish I can give you more examples, because I only recently I saw a fairly elaborate paper on Shaivite music and Shaivite literature by a musicologist called Dr. Pramila Gurumurthy. So if you can remember the name, you can look it up. So Devaram, of course, it also specified Trinya, one of the Nayanmars, Trinyana Sambandar was also a great music exponent. So there was mention of what pun should be used for singing the different Devarams. So the formal music and the connection to religion and spirituality has a very long tradition. And of course, when we come back to the Trinity again, Muthuswami Dikshitar, who followed a different Medakarta ragas, structure called Raganga Ragas. Muthuswami Dikshit also has mentioned a lot of music terms in his kritis as describing Devi as somebody who is pleased by music. I mean, not just music in general, but the Raganga Ragas by the 22 Shrutis. You know, there's a lot of technical references. Of course, not surprising, Dikshita's scholarship in music, but also his bhakti. What I would like to do is, I would like to take a verse from Devaram and follow it up with a part of Dikshita Kriti. This is a very popular verse. Everybody knows that, where Appar Swami, one of the Devaram was actually composed by three different Nayanars, Appar, Sundarar and Trinyana Sambandar. Appar's Devaram talks about how it likens grace of Shiva to beautiful things in life, and in that he makes a list, and the very first thing that makes the list is the music from Veena. As you know, Veena has also very sacred position in our culture. Masyo Veenayo Pasyo Veenayo Valai Vadiyamum Visitenralum Vingilave Nilum Masyo Veenayo Malai Madiyamum Visitenralum Vingilave Nilum Moso Valdarai பொய்கையும் போன்றதே மோசு வள்ளரை பொய்கையும் போன்றதே ஈசம் யாதை இணையடி நிழலே. He says Shiva's grace is like the pure music from Veena, the pleasant weather, Malai Madiyamum, and the moonlit evening, Veesu Tendralum, a gentle breeze, and Vingla Venilum, that's what is the right level of sunlight and the warmth. Moosu Vandarai Poigayum Pondrade, pond with a beautiful lotus. So he picks visual and other different sensory images, and he starts that with the music from Veena. Interestingly, apparently it was this. While Devaram is now sung in different ragas, because there is no set, music, while some punts were indicated in those days, several centuries ago, over time, you have the Oduvar tradition where it's passed from generation to generation in very strict terms. But on the Carnatic side, it is very common for musicians to take Devaram and sing it in different ragas. And I saw that this particular verse is primarily sung in Purvi Kalyani. And when I saw that, I said, oh my God, I was anyway planning to sing this with Dikshita's Gamaka Kriya, which is the equivalent of Purvi Kalyani, because I wanted to reference how Dikshita talks about the 10 Gamakams. And the Gamakams were, of course, have always been illustrated and demonstrated and taught through the Veena for several centuries, Madhuraga Puri Nilaye Mani Valaye Malaya Dvaja Padya Raja Tanaye Vedo Vidombana Vadane Vijaya Veena Gana Dashagamaka Kriye Madhumata Modita Hridaye Sadaye Mahadeva Sundaresha Priye Madhumuraripu Sodari Sadodari Vidhi Guru Guha Vashankari Shankari Meenakshi Me Modam Dehi Me Kangi Raj Matangi. As you know, these I just mentioned about Sangatis, Kritis of this type. They have a lot of wonderful Sangatis, but in a demonstration mode, we just don't repeat any line. In fact, I want to share a light-hearted thing. Sometimes when we, as part of the puja, they ask somebody in the audience, somebody in the devotees, especially they pick a little younger person to sing. I always tell my kids, when you sing in that occasion, you don't go through all the sangatis and repeat each sangati twice like you are made to practice. You should be able to just sing the first sangati. If at all you want to sing twice, sing the first sangati once, last sangati once, and then keep going. And also choose the right kriti, because I still cannot forget somebody. We were all very hungry, and the Ganesha puja was getting ready to close, and one elderly person, when he was asked to sing, he sang Vatapi Ganapatim. So I would like to conclude with one very short kriti of Dikshitar. As I said, Dikshitar followed Raganga Raga, Sampurna Mela scheme, and he made it a point to compose one kriti in every Raganga Raga, 72 Raganga Ragas. And the last Raganga Raga in Dikshitar tradition is Rasa Manjari. The equivalent in the other more popular Melakarta scheme is Rasika Priya. Sare Gama Pada Ni Sa Ni Pa Ga Sa. This is Rasa Manjari, 72nd Raganga Raga. In this, he talks about the Devi as somebody who is pleased by who is worshipped by the Raganga Ragas, the 72 Raganga Ragas. Of course, in Vidya's presentation, she talked about the importance of Shringara Rasam in Bharatanatyam. Even in Carnatic music, if outside of the pure, the Bhakti domain, Shringara Rasam is, for Padams and Javalis you have that, but there is underlying Bhakti, because the hero of the song is always the Lord. Right? Shringara Rasamanchari Sri Kamakshi Gauri Srita Jana Kalpavallari Tildaye Hom Shringara Rasamanchari Shri Kamakshi Gauri Shrita Jana Kalpavallari Childaye Angarakadi Graha Dosha Nivarana Kari Mananga Kusumadi Shakti Priyakari Angarakadi Graha Dosha Nivarana Kari Mananga Kusumadi Shakti Priyakari Dvisaptati Raganga Ragamodini Ananga Varada Vedini Raganga Ragamodini Ananga Varada Vedini Mangaladairi Rasika Pungava Guru Guha Janani Shringara Rasamanjari Raganga Ragamodini Ananga Varada Vedini Mangaladaini Rasika Pungava Guru Guha Janani Shringara Rasamanjari Shri Kamakshi Gauri Shrita Jana Kalpavallari Since Dikshita's purpose was to make sure all the 72 Raganga Ragas are registered, recorded for posterity, I don't think he envisioned that people after 200, 300 years are going to sing his kritis. I think he was doing it primarily to take what was given to him by his ancestors, wanted to make sure that his students got a complete wealth of what his ancestors had created in terms of the 72 Melakata or the Raganga Ragas. So he uses a lot of Swarakshara just to show the Swaras in this Raga. And then in that, when he says Dvisaptati Raganga Raga Modini, he basically says the Devi is pleased by the 72 Raganga Ragas. So I know time is limited. There is a lot of instances where music and Bhakti, music and spirituality have always been one and the same in our tradition. And we talked about spirituality. You can have a broader meaning because there was I watched an interview recently when the Sangeeta Kalanidhi designate Santhanam Gopalan was asked, there are people who say if you have the knowledge and the skills and the practice in music, you don't really need Bhakti, you can still be a great musician. For which Santhanam Gopalan initially said, sir, in my mind, Bhakti and music cannot be separated. But I really like the way he said, okay, Bhakti is not just about Jivatma, praising and surrendering to Paramatma, but for some people, they could be singing for the Atma within. So if they are sincere, if they take the art form very seriously, and if they sing it for Atma Trupti, that is also a type of Bhakti. Only thing is they may not admit it. So with that note, I would like to conclude. Again, I would like to really thank the Education Committee and the Cultural Committee for giving me this very precious opportunity to share a few of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivakumar ji. Next, we have a Kuchupudi performance. Let me introduce Anuradha ji to you. Anuradha Nehru is the founder and artistic director of Kalanidhi Dance School for over 30 years. Under the leadership, Kalanidhi dance has performed at several prestigious venues and dance festivals in the United States and around the world. She believes in staying true to the depth and beauty of the Indian classical dance style while pushing its boundaries to explore new avenues of creative expression. Anuradha has been recognized by the Governor of Maryland for her dedicated service to the arts and has been supported by arts councils at the county, state, and federal level. Recipient of several awards, Anuradha continues to shape the next generation of outstanding Kuchupudi dancers. She is assisted by her disciple Pratnya Tamire for this lecture demonstration. And it's my pleasure to invite both Anuradha ji and Pratnya for this performance. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about Kuchupudi and spirituality. As we all know that most of Indian classical dance styles and the music comes from a tradition of deeply spiritual content. But I'd like to really focus, and we've had the whole day where different proponents of music and dance have spoken about that connection. So I just thought perhaps I should talk a little bit more specifically about Kuchupudi. I'll start with a brief history of Kuchupudi, and then we'll present three dance excerpts that my student Pratnya Tamire will dance for all of you. So first of all, what's common to all classical dance styles is that there is evidence through sculptures, engravings, literary works back to 2nd century BC and even beyond of music, of a flourishing music, dance, sculpture, and literary works that existed way back then. But very little is really known about the practice of dance between, let's say, 2nd century to the 9th century. We can only glean from texts like the Natya Shastra. But between 10th century to the 15th century, I think a lot of the regional dance styles evolved, including Kuchupudi. And I think there was a whole wave of Vaishnavism that began to spread across the country around this period. And it was in the 12th century that Gita Govinda was written by Jayadeva. And Jayadeva's Gita Govinda had a huge influence on not only the Northeast where he belonged, but across the country. His Ashtapadis are well known even till today. And the whole Bhakti cult, especially I can speak to the Andhra Telangana region, which is where Kuchupudi is from, began to take shape. And so what I want to talk about how we've come to the Kuchupudi of today. It was in the beginning, early on, of course, the Tamil Nadu and Andhra region were all one geographic area. So it was very hard to really separate them by styles. It's easier to separate them by the Devadasi temple dance culture of dance, and then there was the more the dance drama or the Yakshagana style of dance. And so the Kuchupudi that you see today is, we can directly trace back to the Yakshagana format. However, more recently, in the last 100 years or so, 150 years, there has been a lot of intermingling between the dance Yakshagana's format as well as the solo dance. Gurus like Guru Lakshminarayan Shastri learned solo dances from temple dancers, and likewise the temple dancers learned pieces of art from gurus like Lakshminarayan Shastri. So there was a lot of interchange between these two styles of dance. But the underlying common theme was that of bhakti and worship, which was very strong element of our dance form. Siddhendra Yogi is very widely regarded as the father of Kuchupudi, and he is said to have been around the 15th century, living around the 15th century. It's debatable, there's a lot of research on this, but that's the closest estimate we have. And Siddhendra Yogi was married to a girl when he was just a young boy, but then left that region of Srikakulam to Udupi, where he was sent for further studies. And he was a brilliant man. He became very knowledgeable about all the Vedas, the music, dance traditions, and he decided as a grown adult now and a learned man, he would return to the Telangana region. And so on his way back, he had to cross River Krishna, which, and while he was crossing this river, he was caught in a big flood, and he thought he'd lose his life. And so he prayed to Lord Krishna and said, if you save my life, I will dedicate my life to you. I will take up sannyasi. And so and that's what happened. He got saved, he got thrown onto the other side on the banks, and he gave up. He went back actually to be with his wife, who's now grown up, but instead he took up sannyasi and dedicated his life to write works on Lord Krishna and then create dance dramas. So he wrote a version of Bhama Kalapam, which is very, very well known in the Kuchupudi tradition even today. And he then decided that this art form was going to be taught just to young boys, because he wanted to also travel with his work. And he felt women would be constrained because of many reasons, domestic largely. But he then took young boys, and he also taught young boys who were already well trained in Veda, so they were all these young Brahmin boys that he had chosen to train in the dance and music that he had studied for many years. And that's how the Bhama Kalapam was the original work that Siddhendra Yogi wrote, Krishna Parajata Paharanam also. But these were the format of dance dramas, and Kalapams are a little more contained, 3 characters with not as much scope for dance drama. So moving on, so more recently, my Guru Lakshmanan Shastri was another very important figure in Kuchupudi. He was the one who decided to move from this little village Kuchupudi in the middle of Andhra to a major metropolis like Chennai, which was called Madras when he moved. And he introduced women to this art form. And he, because of his curiosity and his wanting to inculcate the solo dance tradition into his work, more and more women began to learn this art form, and it got more and more popular within India. And his guru, Guru Vempati Chinnasatyam, is my guru. And Guru Vempati Chinnasatyam further popularized this art form not only within the country but worldwide. And he was an incredibly creative innovator. He introduced many different ragas. He introduced an extensive solo repertoire through his own choreographic works. He traveled worldwide, and his students today practice Kuchupudi around the world. So having given this brief overview of 500-year history of Kuchupudi, I want to talk about the Abhinaya technique and the Rasa. I've called it the essence of Rasa because, as Aparna said earlier today, according to me, Rasa is the single most important purpose of Indian dance. And it is actually a very deeply spiritual concept, because Rasa is, it's a very lofty ordeal, and only the best of the best dancers have been able to achieve. But that is the goal, so that is the quest we are all on. That is what we are striving for. And Rasa is when the dancer is able to communicate the whatever it is. It could be an emotion, it could be a story, it could be a concept, whatever it is. She is so skilled in her art form that she's able to communicate that to the audience. Of course, for Rasa to truly happen, Rasa happens when the audience connects to that emotion. But the audience has to be equally ready to receive the Rasa. So in the Rasa concept in Indian dance, the audience, there are many different audiences for different things. So if the audience is already fine-tuned to this and is ready to receive it, it's like food. The same food doesn't appeal to everybody. So the Rasa in every food is going to appeal to those people who are open to those particular tastes and flavors. So it's exactly like that. So for me, talking about spirituality, I think everybody is spiritual. It's just that we're all at different stages in our growth. And so let me not talk too much about spirituality now because we have a panel coming up. But today, for today's demonstration, I have chosen 3 different excerpts. Each one is with a slightly different intent. One is, first of all, Indian dance is very layered. We have Nritta, which is usually the first layer of dance, pure dance that we learn. Then we teach the gesture language through which we are able to tell stories. So for that, you have to be able to communicate using a hand gestures as well as facial expression. The final, and I would say the pure dance or the Nritta level of learning and communication, although it can be also used for Rasa or to communicate Rasa, of course, but it is the most elementary level of describing. It tends to beautify dance, but it's also, so that's the Nritta. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Nritya, which is the gesture language, is where we are using our body language to communicate with our audience. Then there is a conceptual level or the intellectual level, which is, and the heart level, which is the communicating the feeling, and that's where Rasa truly excels, where it is through feeling, through the communication of love, Shringar, that Rasa is communicated to the audience. So I'm going to be selecting the first piece that Pragnya will present to you is a shlokam. The shlokam is from a full dance, that solo dance choreographed by my guru. But the reason I chose this, because I wanted to describe it more in detail to all of you, is it's a very deeply spiritual verse. It's Sarupyam Tava Pujane. This is taken from Adi Shankara's Shivananda Lahiri. The meaning of this verse underlies the Bhakti's deep quest for mukti or liberation. Through worship, through devotional sankirtana or song, through satsang and other bhaktas, through constantly thinking of Ishvara and seeing him in every chara achara, in every inanimate and animate. I think, can you hear me? Yeah. And this, existence of divinity in every animate and inanimate object is the Sarvamidam Tatam concept that we have in our spiritual understanding. That meaning divinity is all-pervading and is in everything and everywhere. This is a huge concept, but in dance, the dancer has to understand the concept and connect with the spiritual meaning of the words at an intellectual level, as it is conceptual in nature, in order to communicate it to the audience. So this is the first kind of conceptual level of communication that's going on in this verse. So with that, I'll have Pragnya start today with a shlokam, Sarupyam Tava Pujane.
सारूप्यं तव पूजने शिवमहादेवेति संकीर्तने सामीप्यं शिवमहादेवेति संकीर्तने सामीप्यं शिवभक्तिधुर्यजनता सांगत्य संभाषणे सालोक्यं च शिवभक्तिधुर्यजनता सांगत्य संभाषणे सालोक्यं च चराचरात्मक तनुध्याने भवानीपते सायुज्यं चराचरात्मक तनुध्याने भवानीपते सायुज्यं मम सिद्धमत्र भवति स्वामी
So that was at the intellectual conceptual level. But here, the next dance that she will perform for you is the medium of dance will be more physical and descriptive in nature. So here she will be using more hasta mudras, and of course, because our art form is so layered, it will be accompanied with some footwork as well. You cannot divorce these different ways of dance in art forms. So this is a dance called Narayanyam. It's an excerpt of Narayanyam. And she will be presenting Manasas to Manasa Sancharare, written by Sadashiva Brahmendra. Sadashiva Brahmendra was a Telugu saint, composer, and an Advaita philosopher. Filled with devotion, he wants his mind to go on a pilgrimage around Brahman. But he visualizes Brahman in the form of child Krishna and describes his physical attributes as follows. Let my mind go about the shikha, which is the hair, of the Lord, which is decorated with the peacock's fine feathers. Let my mind be with the Lord, whose brilliance outwits the brightness of the mirror. So ascetics tend to see, sorry, I'm losing my thing here, sorry. Ascetics see the brightness of a Chandra Chakora as a Chandra Chakora. And so the bright colored parrot, meaning festivity to their eyes. So he uses this imagery. Let my mind be filled with the Lord, who is a Kalpavriksha in the hearts of his devotees. Let the mind complete the pilgrimage with the flow of the music from the Lord's flute. So this is a literal translation of his words, which I thought would be good for you to have in mind while you see the dancer dance. An excerpt from Manasa Sancharare. Thank you. She will now present the last dance of this evening, this afternoon. This is going to be based on Gita Govinda's Ashtapadi, where the underlying spiritual concept of Jivatma and merging with the Paramatma is of significance in the dance and poetry. Here the dancer has to connect more at the heart and mind level, both with her thoughts and feeling. And so it's more of an emotional connect. Thank you.
Can we give one more round of applause to Pratnya? That was a graceful performance. Thank you, Anuradha ji. Now we have an instrumental session by Kapiyoor. Let me introduce Hari to you. Kapiyoor is an Akashvani graded Carnatic vocalist and Vainika. He is a student of Palai Sri C.K. Ramachandran and Nagai Sri R. Muralidharan. He has performed widely in various prestigious venues such as Shanmukhanatha Sangeeta Sabha, Narada Gana Sabha and many more. He currently works as a software engineer in Virginia. It's my pleasure to welcome Hari to the stage.
Namaskaram to everyone. As mentioned earlier, I'll be just giving a small demonstration on how Bhava is given through the Ragam and the different Layam concepts in each composition that is there in Carnatic music. So Bhava is a very important concept in Carnatic music, not just Carnatic music, but music throughout the world. So where music is, of course, the basic concepts that are there is Shruti, Laya, all those different things that are there that make up music. But in order to actually get it to the audience, we have to give bhava or feeling, expression, something has to be there. So bhava is, of course, given and portrayed and presented in a number of ways. So certain schools think that the relationship between raga and bhava is somewhat one-to-one. So certain ragas must be associated with certain bhavas and some things like that. But in practice, what we see in a lot of compositions here and there is that it's not as black and white. We can see different ragas portraying different bhavas, different feelings, different emotions, according to the situation or the lyrics that are there in the composition. And we can see that that is accomplished by handling the raga and applying different Laya concepts accordingly in an appropriate manner. So, of course, where there are different compositions that portray different bhavas in general within the same raga, there are also compositions where within the same composition we can see different bhavas, just with tweaking how certain prayogas of the ragam are handled. So within this demonstration, I'll just be presenting a few ragams, just kind of a really beginner level look into how we can see, how we can at least understand how different ragams, how we can see the usage of different phrases within ragams and how the same thing can evoke different bhavas. Let's start with a really heavy ragam, Bhairavi. So Bhairavi is, of course, a very versatile ragam. We can see so many different compositions in different contexts that are there. We'll just take a few. Firstly, we'll take Yaru Ivar Yaru. This composition of Arunachala Kavi is, of course, part of the famous Rama Natakam. And it conveys the scene where Rama lays his eyes upon Sita for the very first time while walking through Mithila. So various parts of this composition portray Rama admiring the beauty of Sita and wondering who such a person is, such a beautiful person is. Accordingly, the composition has various phrases that emulate that love at first sight feeling, that bhava that Rama would have felt as he was saying these lines. Let's take a look at one example here in the very first line. Yaru Ivar Yaru. Yaru Ivar Yaru Yenna Pero Harinen Yaru So the mellow tone that we're seeing here, it kind of imbibes that love, that wonderment that he's feeling. Who is she? What is her name? I don't know. So we can see that through the handling of the gamagas here, it's very softly sung. So, handling each of those swaras softly, where if we did yaro, handling each of those gamagas in a more brisker way, it wouldn't convey that bhava as effectively. See how moving through each of those swarams really fastly like that, it completely voids that feeling. That slow movement between the swaras really gives that feeling of wonderment that Rama has. Another example here is in the Charanam, the very famous line. Chandra bimba mukha malarale Chandra bimba mukha malarale ennai taane paarkura oru kaale. So the slow tempo here, we're admiring the beautiful face of Sita, and also Rama is asking, is she really looking at me? Think of that teenage curiosity. She's seeing a girl you like, and that feeling is imbibed here. Completely voids that feeling. Slow movement there really gives that feeling there. So that's an example of more of a Sringara Bhava there in Bhairavi. Let's look at a slightly different example. So there's a composition, Janani Mamava, in Bhairavi, again in Bhairavi, set to Mishra Chapatalam. This is a Navaratri Kriti of Maharaja Swadhitirunal. So this composition is one of praising the traits of Saraswati Devi and praying for her victory. So, Janani Mamava Mege Bharati Jagat Janani. So you can see it's in a completely different mood here. So whereas we were a little bit more calm, a little bit more elaborate with our phrases in Yaro Iru Yaro, we're picking up the pace here for this composition. So one other concept here is the concept of kind of presenting certain phrases in an offbeat manner. Janani Mamava doesn't really give that sense of victory, that Veera Bhava there. Takita Janani, pushing that beat, pushing the phrase by one small matra, it automatically gives that feeling of Janani, as if we were really calling for the victory of Saraswati Devi. This composition, along with so many other compositions, use this not necessarily just in Bhairavi, as we will see later. Use this little trick, we'll say, to invoke that energy associated with so many different bhavas. Let's look at a third example in Bhairavi, in Balagopala. So Balagopala is a composition, of course, on Rajagopala Swami at Mannargudi. And as the very first word suggests, it's addressing a young Krishna. We kind of feel the same sweetness that we would associate with the phrases here as we saw in Yaro Ver Yaro. But this is not one of love. This is one of pampering a child, so to say. But we're seeing and visualizing the various traits of such a young Krishna. How sweetly that phrase is given is. It truly shows how we're pampering the child. Also in the Anupallavi, Neela, the slow pace that we handled at Nishadam. See how we're elaborating at Nishadam at various places to invoke that calmness, and as a side effect, not as a side effect, but along with that calmness to portray that that pampering, that cuteness that we feel while visualizing that the young Lord Krishna. At the same time, though, within the same composition, in the Charanam, we invoke a completely different bhava. We go on to describe the various feats that Lord Krishna has, such as defeating the Rakshasas or saving Draupadi. Let's take the Charanam, the Madhyama Kala line itself. Drona Karna Duryodhana Dihara Draupadi Mana Samrakshana Kara. See how earlier in the composition we were elaborating and spending our time getting to each phrase, to each of the different swaras. Drona Karna. It's much more, not rough, but a little bit more brisk. As soon as we go back to the Pallavi, we go back to describing the young Krishna, and that bhava is brought back. So this is a few examples of Bhairavi. So how bhava, the different concepts within the raga, different phrases in ragas are in the same raga are handled differently, and how Laya concepts are applied in completely different manners to bring out bhavas at the appropriate times. In the interest of time, let's go on to a different raga. One other raga that's also similarly versatile and in its ability to portray different bhavas is Purvi Kalyani. So let's take, for example, Anada Nattu Maduvarthille. This is a composition of Neelananda Shivan, set to Rupatalam. So the lyrics in this composition are one of just portraying the jubilation of the composer in seeing or visualizing the divine dance of Lord Nataraja at Chidambaram. So there's two tones that are predominant in this composition. One of admiration at the different aspects or the traits of Nataraja's dance, as well as exclaiming that his the sense of devotion that comes from exclaiming that his devotees will never face defeat as long as they are at his padukas. So this combination of tones or feelings calls for a very energetic but happy bhava. So in order to depict the respect and bhakti that one would feel at visualizing or imagining Lord Nataraja's dance. In this particular composition, this is handled by picking up the pace. and kind of using the same layer concepts that we saw with Janani Mamava in Bhairavi. Ananda nadamaduvarthillai Sadananda nadamaduvarthillai Sadananda nadamaduvarthillai. So, Nadamad, same way that we did Janani, at one talli. Nadamad, Nadamaduvarthillai automatically brings that energy. We're also presenting the whole the composition as a whole in that picked up tempo, slightly faster tempo. Another example of us showing this energy in the composition is in the Anupallavi lines, the Jati there. Tajam tagajam tagadimi talangu tagadinginatum talangu tagadinginatum tagadimi tagadinginatum Sadananda nadamaduvarthillai. Cutting each of those phrases. So along with the actual tempo and all, picking up the tempo and showing the small unelaborated gamagams that we see with those fast, that we associate with faster compositions, we also give emphasis when we enunciate each of the syllables. As if we're actually saying the Shalkatta for Lord Nataraja's dance. So all these different concepts we can see in how we portray an energetic form of Purvi Kalyani. Let's take a slightly different example in Meenakshi Mehmudam. I'm slightly bending the rules here since, strictly speaking, Meenakshi Mehmudam is considered composed in a different ragam called Gamga Kriya, but it's been, over the years, it's been popularly made into a kind of a Navadara, a form of Purvi Kalyani. So let's take a look at a few of the places, a few of the phrases present in Meenakshi Mehmudam. Meenakshi Mehmudam Dehi Me Jatagi. So this composition, of course, in praise of Madurai Meenakshi, is one of, it really portrays a Shanta Bhava, a peaceful Bhava, one of admiration. So nothing much, no other Bhavas are really predominant in this composition, because as with a lot of Muthuswami Dikshita's compositions, they're just one of plain admiration for the deity in question's various traits and attributes. So this is just a calm reflection of Madurai Meenakshi's various traits. So we can see, as we saw with Balagopala and Yaru Ivriyaru and Bhairavi, it's utilizing a very calm tempo and elaborating each and every single swaram as much as we can to really sink in the depth of each of the words and each of the phrases in the raga. For example, Me Jakagi. See how we handle the Daivatam there. This elaboration of the Daivatam is not evident at all in Anuradha Madhava. See how we just go to the Daivatam and then we're done with it. We just finish and go on. So that's the difference between handling the different gamakas here. So where with the more happy or with the more calm bhava, we elaborate the gamakas, and with the more energetic bhava, we just go on. Another example of this calm bhava being portrayed here is in the Anupallavi. Mana matre me ma. In Purvi Kalyani, usually that Pratimadhyamam is not elaborated like that as extensively. Even there, at the very end, I just... That's the more popular, more common way of handling that Pratimadhyama. Elaborating that swaram there, it really brings out that intent to really sink in and show the depth of each of the phrases of Purvihiyam. Those are two ragams that I just presented within this short amount of time. These really, so many of the different ragams we can see that are very similar in fashion. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. Really, the main takeaway I'd like to give from this is that the bhava, the emotions that we really present with each composition, with each raga even, is purely dependent on how we handle it. How we're given kind of a template by each of the composers. We just have to handle it in an appropriate manner. It's possible to, handle each of these gamakas or each of these phrases differently to evoke potentially different bhavas. That may even be appropriate, but it has to be done with some thought behind it. And so I'll just conclude here today for now. So thank you again for so much for everyone listening to this.
Thank you so much, Hari, for that very illuminating demonstration, picking one raga and showing three different emotions, bhava in that. We truly appreciate it. Hari was again kind of not added at the last minute, but towards the end. But he came up with this idea and he demonstrated it so well. Hari had moved back to India last year and for what we thought was for good, but he has come back and we're so glad to have him back. And thank you for agreeing to do this. We really appreciate it. A big round of applause for Hari. Next we have a panel discussion. So we'll again give us a few minutes to set up and then we'll be ready for that. Thank you. Okay, so like Aparna said, we have the panelists on the stage. Some of the panelists you're already familiar with. Anuradha Nehru, who is the founder and artistic director of Carnatic Dance School. She's here. And Aparna is going to be setting the tone. You also know, you've already been introduced to her. Give a brief introduction to Gokul. Gokul Chandramouli is a disciple of Sangeeta Kala Acharya Srimati Kalyani Sharma, Sangeeta Kalanidhi designate Neyveli Shri R. Santana Gopalan, and Sangeeta Bhushanam Srimati Bhagavati Mani. Bhagavati Mani. Thanks, Mani. He has a vast experience of performing in India and the US and imparts training to many students. Please welcome Gokul. Lisa Santhanam, another panelist, is a passionate Odissi performing artist and teacher of the Srajan Gharana. She is committed to honoring her dance lineage and this oral tradition by offering quality performance and learning opportunities that reflect her extensive training and ongoing studies with her gurus Ratikant and Sujata Mohapatra. There are two things that always inspire her. First, the learning path, as there are thousands of texts, stories, and details that will take several lifetimes to learn. Second, her gurus who have given her the knowledge, pushed her for perfection, and who have introduced her to inspiring souls who have kept her on the right path. Please welcome Lisa Santhanam. Over to Aparna.
Namaste, this is round 2 of the panel, and I hope whatever we speak today, whatever emerges today, it just builds on the first panel that you all were not present to hear, but I trust in the process because we've been holding space for you. A few points that I just want to kind of set the foundation, so rather than have each of them repeated, this is the foundation. The seminal text for Natyam, all kinds of classical dancing, Geetam, Vadyam, roughly translated as music, is the Natya Shastram. And you see in the Natya Shastram, rhythm and Rasa and Laya is embedded in music, in both the instrumental, which is called Vadyam, and the spoken vocal, which is the Geetam. It is only when Geetam, Vadyam, and Natyam, no matter what form, when they all come together, you have Sangeetam. So it is especially beautiful today that in the Natya Shastram, the Purna Vadyams, one of that is the Veena. And the Natya Shastram is very clear that the only point of all of these beautiful performing arts, we have limited today to classical forms, does not mean the others don't have, but we had to draw the line somewhere. The only purpose is if rasa is evoked, not in us, but in you, the audience. And as we heard in the first panel, it's not a one and done thing. It's not like, oh, I got rasa today, I'm done. Just like spirituality is not a destination. It's not a one and done. It's not like, oh, I'm more spiritual. And I commonly hear this phrase, I'm very spiritual, but I'm not religious. It's kind of like saying, I love rasa, but I don't like abhinaya. It's kind of like saying, I love rasa, but I pay no attention to swaras and talam. Because the reality is you can't have one without the other. Spirituality is your experience. And what do you experience? You are completely captive to what's happening on stage if this is performing arts. The musicians have to use their talent, their skills, their vidvat, and have the competence of their artistry in order to be able to communicate to you, the audience, what they experience. And their experience is a bhavam. What they experience, and of course there are various kinds of bhavam, Sthai bhavam, the one that holds the entire song. When you heard the demonstration of Yaro Ever Yaro in Arunachalakari Ramayana Natakam, you have to remember the context of Yaro Ever Yaro. You can't just sing Yaro Ever Yaro as Bhairavi. You have to know who is singing it, what is the word that needs to be emphasized, how do the swaras get split. You see, they don't talk about rhythm in dance, it's in music. How are the words split so that it can make an emphasis? And when the musician and musicians make that bhava available to us as dancers, the dancers are finely tuned devices because of years of experience of artistry and technique, some of which don't make sense to our younger ones. When our device is tuned, like, a long time ago you used to have these scanner radios, you could scan the frequency. A little bit of that happens on stage. We tune on to the bhavam of the musician. If there is no music, there is no dance. If there is no bhava in music, there is no bhava in dance. If there is no bhava in music or dance, forget about rasa. So how do we communicate our spirituality, our experience of music, the bhavam, the ragam, the talam, the laya, swaras, how do we communicate that to you? If you're listening to a music performance, you just need to close your eyes and you have the experience of spirituality. If you know the words, helps, but if not, just the melody, that which creates rasa is raga. And you don't need words for that. There's a lot of neuroscientific research on that. What does it evoke in your brain? What is the emotion center it goes through? But in dance, it's a slightly different ones. We don't want you to close your eyes. Now can the dancer close their eyes? That would be a little hard. So when we have a finely skilled body, artistry, Angashuddham we call it, we have the ability to feel the music, experience it, express it through our dance, so that some of you in the audience can resonate and experience it. You may not experience it the first time, but over a period of time, art refines that, both in us and in you. But I'm curious to hear what is spirituality to everybody? How do they experience it? Because it is individual. How do they express it? How do they teach it? And over to you.
Before I start, may I request a little bit of silence on that side? There is a lot of... Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Aparna Madam. This was a very nice introduction. So, first off, I'm really thankful to SSVT for giving us this opportunity to express our views on this topic. So there's a humming noise. If someone can help. It's all the... Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's better. Okay. So today we have a panel of very experienced, very experts, I would say, in both music and dance. Of course, probably I'm the only musician, so I should not say I'm an expert. I don't want to say that. Oh, you are a musician. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, of course. Okay, you are the expert. I'm not the expert. I'm the layperson. I will just assume that way. But expert dancers that we have already listened to and seen in the last 1 hour or so. And hopefully this will be a continuation of the first panel that was organized earlier in the day. Unfortunately, we were not able to be a part of it. Really, the topics of our discussion are threefold. First off, what is spirituality to each of us? And then, what is the relationship between music or dance and spirituality? How do we express it? How have we experienced it? And finally, what are the benefits of pursuing music or dance? As maybe a spiritual benefit in terms of the spiritual aspects, as well as general other aspects from our experience. So with that, I would like to first start with Lisa, madam, to express your thoughts. Let's keep our comments, to roughly about 5 minutes, so that we can, maybe have like a sort of summary set of thoughts at the end of it.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So, for me, spirituality is a process. It is not something that is taught. It is a journey, just like dance is a journey. So what has happened, at least for me in my life, is generally speaking, I observed spirituality. I observed my parents, I observed my gurus. Sujata Appa, before a performance, we would jump out of the rickshaw and stop and do our puja at the temple and then hop back in. So earlier on in my career, I observed it, but that was never enough. It takes a little bit of discipline to do that research and analysis to understand God and understand the impact of God in your life. Primarily because I think for each of us, this dance and the music is a means to God Himself. So it is our job to equally appreciate God so that we can offer it in the most sincere and pure manner.
So do you want to comment about the relationship between your music, your dance, and how you look at spirituality? Have you had some experiences in training students, teaching students? Have there been questions about that topic from your students?
Yes, there have. So I'll give two scenarios. So I help my teacher in his classes in Odissi, and then I have a few students here, and then I've also done a couple workshops. So the audience is a little bit different. So when you're in Odissi, for me personally, I feel like the land just generates spirituality. There's temples everywhere. It's very easy for students to understand God, Bhakti, and those types of concepts because it's so visual to what you do in your day of life. Here in the US, it's not, unfortunately, because we have so many different cultures and religions. I think the benefit for my students is that they can take the concept of spirituality and apply it to any God. So whether they are Christian, whether they are Muslim, whether they are Hindu, it's the same devotion, it's the same bhakti. It's just conveying it so that it can be understood. Now, the younger audience is a little bit more challenging. That spirituality is, again, an age thing, I would say. So 6, 7, 8-year-olds probably are not going to be able to generate that bhakti. They might, but I feel that it's something that comes with a little bit of age.
Thanks a lot. Lavanya, would you like to express your thoughts?
So to me, I come from Bengal. So we have a very rich tradition of, growing up with the Upanishads and the Vedas, etc. And so there was a new religion formed by Raja Ram Mohan Rai, which was based on Upanishads and Vedas, where he invoked a supreme being, which is like the smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest, like it's talked about in Vedas and Upanishads, and it's formless supreme being. So though I did not very consciously practice that religion, but we sort of grew up with that culture, and Rabindranath Tagore was a very big part of our culture, and he actually transmitted this philosophy through his music. And so in his music, the words and the tune are sort of blended with this kind of spirituality, with which I've grown up. And she made a point, like when we are young, we may not always try to be able to relate with this, but listening to this kind of philosophy, since from when I was born, somewhere it struck a chord. So to me, spirituality is that, and the way Tagore expresses his wonderment at the symmetry, at the beauty, at the everything around us, the universe. So he's praising the supreme, being who is making all this possible. So to me, spirituality is that. And so when I'm teaching music, though I'm trained in Hindustani classical, but Tagore's music is very much, influenced by Hindustani classical. But this underlying philosophy is very strong in his music. So this gets inculcated into the young minds when they're learning this music, and slowly with time, this settles down in the psyche of the person. So that's what I would say.
So I had one follow-up question, if you don't mind. So I'm a Carnatic musician. So in Carnatic music, we have compositions. Our compositions have a lot of importance. Like, right from a young age, students are encouraged to learn not the raga, but the composition. The raga is like developed through compositions. So compositions is the centerpiece of our system. And compositions are, it's very good that these compositions are all on a deity. Sometimes there are a lot of philosophical content in it and all that. But the general perception, at least in the Carnatic sphere, maybe I'm talking about ignorance, so please help me cure that ignorance if you deem fit. The general perception is that in Hindustani music and non-South Indian forms of music, lyrics don't have much importance. What is your observation
That's
about
a very
that?
good question, and you're absolutely correct. If you really look into the Hindustani classical music, lyrics really don't play so much of a role. It's mostly the combination of the notes, the melody, that is most important. But Tagore, was like in different ways in his life, he always broke the rules. So when he started composing, the lyrics became very, very important. So when the Bengalis, when they sing, for them the lyrics are extremely important. You cannot do without the lyrics. And so also I would say, not just Tagore, but the gharanas that developed in Bengal also had this kind of a tradition. So the tradition was there and Tagore enriched it. So when I grew up, these words were very important. It was taught to us how to pronounce this correctly, where to stop, you cannot stop in between the words. So those things were really important.
Wonderful, wonderful. So just another quick follow-up. So one of the topics that we want to try to develop as part of this discussion, what are the benefits of pursuing music? So in your perspective, of course from the Bengali perspective and Rabindranath Tagore's compositions, there's a lot of importance to lyrics. But how would you convey to a young kid, what the benefits of those of singing a raga or singing a composition? Like, do you explain to them the meaning? Have you used some specific, very simple techniques to explain them, and so forth?
You know, for the youngsters, there are two things, which one of these Tagore also used to believe in. For his own children, he used to make them learn very difficult poetry at a very young age. And some people used to ask him what's the point, but he said that if they know the lyrics at this young age, by the time when they grow up, it's completely inside them. So I think it's a very good point. So when someone is learning Tagore's music, it may be at that point it's not completely possible for the student to grasp, but it settles down in the mind. That's one aspect. And the other aspect is Tagore has written more than 2,500 songs. So there's a big array of words and tune. So one can choose some songs which are more maybe attuned for a younger mind, so that they can directly relate to it. Though there's a lot of spirituality, but it can be easily related. So there are these two aspects.
Lisa, did you want to add to that?
Sure. For us as Odissi dancers, we have our own unique music. So our music is neither North Indian classical or South Indian. We have our own unique music. The learning process requires aspects of this. Our dance requires us to understand the rhythm, the bowls, how to pronounce the words. So me, I am not a native Oriya speaker, so I constantly get corrected and making sure I'm saying it correctly. So the words have importance, the rhythm has importance, and it just makes that whole well-rounded learning, and it really imbibes in you as a dancer if you have that music as a background as well.
That's a very nice point. In fact, just feeding off some of the points that were told before I move on to Anuradha madam. One of the things I have found very useful when teaching students is to constantly remind them that in this world of today, the ideal world would be really where all we do is just sing or dance. All we do is just sing or dance, but a lot of people are not doing that. Like myself, I have a day job, and then I have to continue to pursue music. My mind is already distracted. It's already divided into two discrete parts, one work and then one non-work or music-related part. Now, if we further divide it into many other activities, it's going to get really hard for us to focus, to introspect, to relate to the lyrics, to develop a sense of oneness with what we are pursuing. That becomes very hard. And what I have found helpful in reminding students is to pursue related arts. In case you are bored of pursuing only music, just pursue related stuff to music. For instance, you can learn Tamil, you can learn the Gita, you can learn poetry, like you were mentioning. That will that really helps in many ways. It sharpens your memory, it keeps your intellect active. At the same time, it also helps you relate more to the musical aspects that are being learned. And personally, I have found that very helpful as I was growing up. Anyway, so with that, something wrong with this mic. So with that, let me move on to Anuradha madam, please. Probably this mic is the culprit, I think. Let's not use this one. Let's not use this mic.
Hello. Yeah. What is spirituality is the question. I think for me, spirituality, I first of all believe that everyone is spiritual actually, whether they know it or not. And we discover spirituality or we discover meaning in life whenever we are ready for it. And it's nothing to do with age. There are some children at a very young age who are more spiritual than people who are in their 80s. And the other thing that I think that's common across humanity is the search for happiness. The problem is most people are looking to our external world for that happiness and for that sense of fulfillment and meaning. And the more we look to our external world to bring that satisfaction and meaning, the more agitation, vikshepa we're going to feel. It is the pivoting, for me, spirituality is pivoting to understand oneself. Because we know from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Vedas, from the Upanishads, that divinity is within each one of us. And it is that understanding and merging with the self or with the Godhood, with the God principle, is the ultimate goal of spirituality. And all of us want that liberation, want that sense of fulfillment. So samatvam is one of the key things, I think. Samatvam is, in English, in a very simple phrase, a clear and calm mind. If we can achieve a clear and calm mind, and I think we as dancers and musicians are particularly lucky, especially Indian dance and music, because it's a vehicle for us to find our moksha, to find our liberation. And because, first of all, of the content, because of the discipline, because of the multi-layered, multifaceted aspect of this field. To be a dancer, you have to know, you just don't learn movement. That movement has a history, it has culture, it has philosophy, it has value. So and that's why it's such a long journey for a dancer, I think, and for a musician, it's equally deep. So I don't think one has to be a musician or a dancer, but as dancers we speak about this, to be spiritual. That's another point I wanted to make. So in essence, I think if I need to think about spirituality, it's two things. One is vairagyam and lack of vikshepam, yeah. So agitation of the mind is a problem, and vairagyam, and that's why I like Rasa so much, because when Rasa, the primary purpose of dance, is actually created, and for that moment, or for those few moments, the audience has lost their sense of time and place. And they've forgotten everything else. And somebody else earlier today said that their students, Purvi, they love dancing because while they are dancing, they forget everything else. So that for those brief moments, they're losing their sense of time and place and identity. All of our problems arise from that attachment to our identity, right? So all of these are things that come to mind when I think about
Now that we have that settled, I especially appreciated what Anuradha was saying. And I heard in what you were talking about, the experience of the musician or dancer of their spirituality. If the lyrics are on Jagannatha, the lyrics are on Krishna, the lyrics are on Rama, then you experience the spirituality of that lyric on Rama or Krishna. But what if the lyrics are not on a god? Then the spirituality that you experience is just spirituality. It's spirituality of the music. You brought that up. Raga, which gives rasa. The other point that I wanted to especially highlight in what Anuradha said was, that is the experience level. But remember what we are mandated to do. If we experience spirituality, woohoo. But that doesn't accomplish our job as a performer. Our performing ability rests on our competence to convey that emotion so you experience it. And I think that is where your concept of rasa anubhavam by others come in. But here is where the texts that we have on rasa anubhavam, chapter 6, 7, 8, are lost. We don't have those texts in the Natyashastram. So what we are doing is, from the time the Natyashastram was written around the 2nd century CE, it was the 9th century and 10th century when we come to Abhinavagupta's Natyaviveda. That is where we start seeing how did performing arts evolve over those hundreds of years Because the Bhakti movement came much later in 11th. We picking up a Shankara is where you have Advaita, the concept of Jivatma, Paramatma. So we're picking all of those up. So while experience of spirituality is wonderful and afforded to dancers, musicians, the question really also is, how do we convey it to you? How does Rasa? How is Rasa evoked in you through your experience of my Rasa? And of course, yoga, you touched upon yoga a little bit, that languaging. So I just wanted to reflect that back, excuse me.
So you all raised wonderful questions and points. I'm going to address a few of them when I'm trying to summarize this, what we've heard so far. So again, thanks a lot, Anuradha, and thanks for your thoughts as well. So when it comes to spirituality, the way I think about it, I think everyone has already mentioned this. Spirituality is really dependent on the individual. Everyone has spirituality. All our great saints, including Adi Shankara, or more recently, Mahaperiva, or Ramana Maharshi, all of them, they all say the same thing, which is that everyone is spiritual. It's all within you. You have to explore it. You have to understand it. And it is not a state to be achieved. It's just you are who you are. That in itself, your real state is spiritual. Your real state is meditation. For example, if someone asked Ramana Maharshi of Tiruvannamalai, I want to meditate. How do I meditate? His retort would always, a standard retort would be, first find who that I is. First understand who that I is. And that kind of messaging has come out, to us from our great saints. Now, I wanted to convey a few points from the perspective of Tyagaraja Swami, who is who I consider as my Manasika Guru, having learned Carnatic music and having sung his compositions for a long time. The first thing that comes to my mind about what is spirituality is from this composition called Rama Bhakti Samrajyamu in the Ragam Shuddha Bankala. Many of us must have heard it. In that, the Charanam, he very clearly says, Ila gani vivarimpaleno sala swanubhava vedyame. Ila gani vivarimpaleno sala swanubhava vedyame. So first of all, what does he say? He says that this experience cannot be explained. It cannot be explained in its reality. It has to be experienced by the self. Sala swanubhava vedyame. That is something that we have to keep in mind. So when it comes to the relationship between music and spirituality, again I go back to Tyagaraja Swami. For me, really, music is a means to higher goal, as Lisa mentioned. But that is just our perspective. I think we have to be respectful that what is our perspective may not necessarily be someone else's perspective as well. And so I want to get to a couple of perspectives there. My perspective and Lisa's perspective is that we pursue music to achieve a higher goal. And I find confirmation for this perspective from, again, none other than our Tyagaraja Swami. So in this composition called Inta Kannananda Memi, in the Ragam Bilahari, there are these hidden charanams that no one sings, but they have the entire spiritual message contained in the Vedas and the Vedanta very clearly. Aaduchu Nadamuna Paduchu Yaduta Ra Veduchu Manasuna Kudi Undata Chalu. In other words, dancing and singing to the accompaniment of music, entreating you to come before and being in unison with you in the mind is enough. Inta Kannananda Memi. What else is greater bliss than this? Shri Hari Kirtanache Dehadi Indriya Samuhamula Marachi Sohamainade Salu. Which gets to what Anuradha madam was saying earlier. While singing and performing the kirtanas, the kritis on Shri Hari, I forget the deha, I forget the body, I forget the indriya, that is the senses, and I am soham. I am that. I am experiencing one with the Supreme. That itself is greatness. What else is greater happiness than that? He asks. Then last charanam, which is more popular, నీ జపముల వేళను ఈ జగముల నీవై రాజిల్లునే త్యాగరాజను చరిత్ర ఇంతకన్నానందమేవి. That is, he says, while performing japa of your name, all I can see, all I can think about is you. You shine everywhere. You shine in every entity, in every chara achara. You only shine. And what else can be greater bliss than that? So Tyagaraja Swami has given sort of a confirmation that when we pursue music, but with the right intent, that is, when it is associated with Shri Hari Kirtana, he doesn't say only Kirtanache, he does say Shri Hari Kirtanache. And there are many such instances that can be quoted from Tyagaraja Swami, where he gives sort of a confirmation that music is just not, let us not look at music or dance as only just that art form, but as a means to a higher goal. However, stepping backward a little bit, if we were to think about what's coming out of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2-3, Sri Bhagavan very clearly he says that if you do anything without the benefits, without expecting the benefits, without expecting the fruits of that benefit, even if that benefit is grace of the God or moksha, that itself is the highest yoga that has been conveyed in his sayings in the Bhagavad Gita. Which means that if music is performed with the intent of not having to gain anything, purely surrendering yourself to the music itself, to the raga, to the laya, like Madam was saying, just like, as Anuradha Madam was also saying, kids may be very deeply spiritual because they just give themselves up. They are so innocent, they have nothing else to distract them. They will just give themselves up because there is no I there. There is no identity. There is no I-ness. There is only that music. There is only that song. So in that sense, they are very deeply spiritual. That needs to be respected and that needs to be appreciated as well. One thing I did want to convey was about what are the benefits of pursuing music. And I think some of us, we've already talked about it. And again, I go back to Tyagaraja Swami because he's given the answers to almost every question artists might have. And this is in the composition called Sangeeta Shastra Jnanamo in the Ragam Mukhari. We all have heard the Dhanyasi composition, Sangeeta Jnanamo Bhakti Vina. That is a popular composition. Now this is another composition, Sangeeta Shastra Jnanamo Sarupya Saukhyadami. Going back to Anuradha Madam again, a few minutes earlier, they were performing this Adi Shankara's shloka from Shivananda Lahari, Sarupyam Tava Pujane. Tyagaraja Swami, he boldly mentions that Sangeeta Shastra Jnanamo Sarupya Saukhyadami. So, the knowledge of music is equivalent to Sarupyam. Sarupyam meaning having the same form as the Lord. So, in a certain way of thinking, in a certain philosophy, there are 4 stages that man goes through before achieving moksha. Salokyam, Samipyam, Sarupyam, Sayujyam. Sayujyam is moksha. And Tyagaraja Swami says, just by pursuing music with musical knowledge, one can directly attain the 3rd state, which is Sarupyam, which is a big statement that he is making. And but he qualifies that. He doesn't say only Sangeeta Shastra Jnanam. In Anupallavi he qualifies it. He says, Shringara Rasadya Kilasara Purita Ramakathananda Abdiyuta Purita Ramakathananda Abdiyuta Sangeeta. So, Shringara Rasadya Kilasara Purita Ramakathananda Abdiyuta. So, the Sangeeta Shastra Jnanamu, which is combined with the stories of the Lord, the greatness of the Lord, that is what really gives you Sarupya Saukhyadami, that Tyagaraja Swami has mentioned. Now one can question, okay, is only the Sarupyam, Moksham, all these deeper spiritual things, are these the only benefits of music? No. There are also side benefits that come with it. It's like buy one, get one free. Prema, Bhakti, Sujana Vatsalyam, Srimad Ramavara Kataksham, Niyama, Nishtha, Yasho, Dhana, Osamuni. I am not saying this. Tyagaraja Swami is saying this. So these all come for a ride. You get love, you get bhakti, you get the attitude to surrender, to forget yourself. You are motivated. See, we are getting all this good company. Sujana Vatsalyam. I am getting the love and affection of all these great people here. This is because I am a musician. We have to be thankful for that. Srimad Ramavara Kataksham, the grace of the Lord. Niyama, discipline and self-restraint. And then Nishtha, discipline, self-discipline. Right? Yasho, success, Dhana. We're all making money out of music. But are we behind money? Probably not many of us. Maybe some are. That's a different story. But that comes to us anyway. So with that, I just wanted to convey, and I'll open up for other further comments and thoughts from others as well. That just two things. Spirituality is really dependent on the individual. No matter what, where they are in that spiritual process, like Lisa Madam mentioned, it's a process. And no matter where we are in that process, where we are in that stage, I think just keeping our eyes and ears open to what we are singing, what we are performing is pretty important, because it's very likely that a lot of the answers to the questions that you are seeking are in those as well, as I have experienced with Tyagaraja Swami. Thank you.
We may be out of time, yeah, but I want to kind of throw a couple of things. It so happened the first panel's focus was more on the expression of the experience. How can we as performing artists express our experience so that audience can have the rasa? And what I notice is this panel's focus has been more on the experience of that particular spirituality. How do I experience it? How do we grow from it? And in terms of events, when we curate such events, as I said, I'm a big believer in process. It just finds its own way there. So closing thoughts before we kind of wrap up, we can go from there, across there.
So when I was listening to all of you, what came to my mind is, yes, there is this, the thought of whether we can convey our spirituality to the people who are listening to us. Of course, that's there. But there are different types of music, like in Indian music. If you think of Dhrupad, the oldest form, that by nature is contemplative. It does not have that aspect so much in the very nature of the music. It's more contemplative than, interactive. If you think about Hindustani classical, it later evolved into Khayal, which in a sense is more interactive with the audience. So coming back to Tagore again, since I grew up in Bengal, and Tagore had a very rich influence in his life of Dhrupad, because their family used to host these Dhrupad singers in their home, and so he was very influenced by that. So I guess his music, if I say, the main spirit of his music is contemplative. So it's more about how to realize the spirituality. It's that journey, and as he said, that music is the infinite between two souls. Music is something which gives us the taste of infinity in our, what should I say, that everyday, the kind of drudgery that we have to go through. So that's my thought.
I think the only other message I'd like to convey is that if you think about the path to get to spirituality and the path to achieve all of the goals that you're trying to achieve as an artist, as well as your own personal goals, none of that happens without a guru. So the intent has to be sincere and positive, and the guru or the guide has to help you get there. Which is why I'm not a guru, I'm just a teacher. So my gurus have taken me down that path, and I'm still going down that path from a spirituality viewpoint. It takes a lot of additional research and as well as inner reflection to really convey and devote yourself to a feeling, a religion. So it definitely takes time, but it's a beautiful journey to go through.
since we're talking more about us as artists experiencing it, I guess I can speak to that as opposed to Rasa. I think I really like what Lisa said, the role of the guru, the role, and also to have clarity in the overarching goal, right? What is our overarching goal in this path of spirituality? That clarity plus the guru plus sincere effort together puts us as artists particularly on a path to attaining closer to that. And also compassion, gratitude are very important on this path, I think. Scaling out of oneself, scaling out to society.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to directly address one of the questions that Aparna had raised earlier, how do we convey? One thought, and I know there's probably a long discussion to go there, one thought that I have seen elderly and also scholarly musicians, as well as spiritual masters such as Ramana Maharshi or Mahaperival, convey: first clean yourself, first be realized yourself. That itself is a big service to society, is what has been conveyed. Let me stop there, just as a thought for further discussion.
Thank you so much. And I think as people who have dedicated and surrendered ourselves to the art, my experience has been we don't need to do a darn thing. The art clears you. There is no room for the arrogant artist. If you surrender to the art form and you're dedicated to the art form, I suspect you will have the blessing of the art form that transforms you. So when you get up on whatever platform you are and reflect back that you receive from art, rasa and resonance is born. Hope you've engaged like this. We have many more rounds that we hope to do in future, but I'm aware of the time and we're probably woefully behind, but please bear with us. Thank you.
The Northern Virginia area. With me today, I have my student Simi Mohanty, who is also from Northern Virginia. Simi and I are very happy to be here today highlighting Bhakti and Odissi dance. So first, I'll discuss a brief overview of Odissi history and then focus on the Bhakti as well as the learning process and how it's taught to students. And we have 2 items to demo this afternoon, so please watch out for those items. From a history viewpoint, Odissi follows the same path as many of our other Indian dance forms. It originates from our eastern part of India and a land or a state called Orissa. It's from about the 11th century time frame, and it originated as an offering to Lord Jagannath. So daily Maharis or Devdasis would dance morning, noon, and night for Lord Jagannath. When the British rule came about, the dance form collapsed. So a lot of the processes and the rituals that were happening inside the temple were paused. So we had several gurus who reconstructed the dance. My primary guru is Guru Kelucheramo Batra. And he was one of the people who really went and reconstructed this dance. So if we talk about the learning process, there's the technical pieces. So heavily focused on perfection. My school that I'm associated with in India is perfection. So they want every foot position to be perfect, every level of sitting perfect. There's no halfway. You either do it right or you don't do it correctly. That's the technical piece. That also takes a long way for students to attain. The spiritual path of learning is a little bit similar to the technical. So if you think about how a student learns an item, from the beginning student up to the more advanced student, the repertoire moves with that student. So what that means is our more junior students are performing items that are a little bit more simpler, may not be as technical. They still will have elements of devotion and bhakti, but it'll be more easier to execute. Then as we pursue and we move forward in our dance and our learning, the items become a little bit more complicated and more complex. I would say that as I reflect today on who I am and who I'm striving to be for my students, is I think about a message from one of the Maharis before she passed away. And that was that our dance form from Odissi originated in the temples, and it was a form of devotion. And no matter how it is today, 200 years later, how it's evolved and what it looks like today, the intent should always be on God. And if you have that frame of mind, I feel as a dancer, it keeps your path very focused and very sincere. And it helps you achieve those spiritual goals that you're aiming to achieve. I think the second piece of it is also that if you think about learning, it's not enough to be a dancer. You have to be a smart dancer. I actually had done a workshop with Padma Subramanian Akka, and remember her saying that to all of us. You learn the dance, but you have to have the mind to go and research. You have to have the mind to dive into the text. If you don't know the language, you have to learn the language. It's a process, and it's a lifetime to achieve. It's not fatafat and done, right? It is dive into it, and you have your whole entire life to go through this path. So today there are two items we're going to show. The first item is from it's an Ashtapadi. It's called Chandana Charchita. I will call Simi to the stage for this one. So Chandana Charchita is a beautiful composition describing Hari, Krishna. So the gopis are surrounding Krishna and the garden. Radha is speaking to the Saki about what Krishna is doing, right? So if we think about the complexities of the relationship of Radha and Krishna, Krishna is roaming about and very loving with many different women, right? But the concept is God is not just for one person. God is for everyone. So this is a nice, beautiful piece to show just that small excerpt of what the beginning items of bhakti and devotion look like in our dance style. Thank you.
Vilasini सती तेरी परे विलासिनी विलासती विलासिनी विलासती विलासिनी विलासती तेरी परे चंदन चाचिता नीला कलेवारा पीता वसाना चंदन चाचिता नीला कलेवारा चंदन चाचिता नीला कलेवारा पीता वसाना
So, as we start talking about the process and the spiritual path to get there, this next item is probably the most famous piece to cultivate that bhakti and devotion. The item is called Ahe Nila Sahila. It's an Oriya Abhinaya, and it actually reflects my own spiritual journey because I had asked my gurus, which I shouldn't have, many years ago, if I could learn this item, and they said, no, you're not ready. Only after the last couple years did they finally teach me this item. It took a long process to learn not just the steps, but to really dive into the intent and the story behind it. So in this story, there is a Muslim poet, and his name is Alaap. So he has leprosy, unknowingly, or I guess, I'm not sure if you're aware, but in Odissi there's a famous temple called the Puri Jagannath temple. That temple is only open to Hindus. So Muslims, no other religion is allowed. So he observes Jagannath from afar, and he is probably the most famous devotee of God. So because he's going through this pain, suffering from leprosy, he's begging the God, please save me, just how you have saved Gajaraja when his foot was caught by the crocodile. Please, Lord, save me just how you saved Draupadi when her honor was being tested in the game of dice. There's two other stories in this poem, but for today I'll just show the two. So thank you, everyone. The next item is Ahe Nila Sahila. In conclusion, thank you everyone for coming this afternoon. I am very honored to be part of this event, to share my art, to share my journey. A little out of breath. And did want to obviously thank the organizers, the wonderful panelists, and my gurus who helped me get ready for this event. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisaji. That was a graceful performance. From the beginning, her passion and her enthusiasm that actually pushed me to kind of make this program a reality. That's a fact. It was such a nice experience to work with her. So I can see her passion in every conversation we are having, and I'm so happy to see her perform on the stage. Thank you, Lisaji. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank Simi Mohanty as well. That performance was also beautiful. Thank you, Simi. And the last item we have is a Hindustani music performance. Let me introduce Sudeshna ji. Dr. Sudeshna Basu is a truly talented and accomplished singer. She received rigorous classical training from Bidushi Meera Bodhbhatai of Patiala Gharana. She is also trained in Rabindra Sangeet by the Mistro Sri Ashoketaru Bodhbhatai. Currently, she takes lessons in Dhrupad from the Gundesha brothers. Sudeshna has performed all over the world and has appeared in many radio stations and television channels in India. She received her doctorate in mathematics. She has worked at several universities in USA and in India. She has researched, scripted, performed, directed, and recorded many projects with many of the leading Bengali artists. She recorded many projects with HMV Sarigama. She has more than 15 recorded CDs to her credit. Isn't it our blessing to have Sudeshna ji with us? Please welcome her.
So, good evening to everyone, and I'm very thankful to the Educational and Cultural Committee at the SSVT for inviting me to this session. So this is about the spirituality in Indian arts. So the way I decided that I will offer my music is through Hindustani classical, but as you know that the North Indian classical is a big range of a subject, and it is being practiced in the whole northern part, and each area has its own, style, if you say. And since this is dedicated to spirituality in arts, I thought that I'll address how Tagore invoked spirituality through music. So the compositions that I have chosen, these are all based on North Indian classical rag, and I have chosen different rags which are sung different parts of the day, starting from, the first one is actually a slok from the Upanishad. And so as I was telling during the panel discussion that Tagore brought Upanishad and Vedas into our lives, so he set music to this. And then we move on to his own lyrics and his own music which he composed. So these are different rag which are sung during different parts of the day, but the lyrics all invoke the spirituality of the universal supreme form and the, what should I say, the desire or the urge for a human soul to unite with that and the happiness that comes with it. And I end with a sloka from the Vedas. As I was telling you that Tagore was very influenced by Dhrupad's style of music. So his music structurally exactly resembles the structure of Dhrupad as opposed to Khyal. It has 4 parts: Sthai, Antara, Sanchari and Abhog. And essentially his music, temperamentally I would say it also has that kind of a contemplative nature. But as we all discussed that if it is contemplative or it is interactive, ultimately the audience and the person who is offering makes a connection at some point. So I'll start with the sloka of the Upanishad. Can I get a little bit of reverb? Tamishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram Tvam Devatanam Paramancha Daivatam Pati Padinam Paramam Parastat Ridamadevam Bhuvaneshamityam Yetad Viduramrita Ste Bhavanti Yetad Viduramrita Ste Bhavanti Yetad Viduramritaste bhavanti natasya karyam karanancha vidate natat samascha vadikashadrishyate Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Sruyate Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriyacha Yetad Viduramritaste Natasya Kashchi Patirasti Loke Nacheshita Naiva Chatasya Lingam Swakaranam Karanadhipadhipo Nachasakashchi Janita Nachadhipaha Yetad Viduramrita Ste Bhavanti Yetad Viduramrita
bhavanti yaitat viduramritaste bhavanti eshu devu vishwakarma mahatma sada jananang hridaya sannivishta hridamanishamana savitripto yetad viduramritaste bhavanti yetad viduramritaste viduramritaste bhavanti.
Now we move on to the next one. This is in Rag Bhimpalashi, which is a song which is sung during the afternoon, and you can see the meaning of the words. Again, it is rejoicing our life and its unison with the universe.
বিপুল তরঙ্গরে বিপুল তরঙ্গরে সব গগন বেলিয়া মগন করি অতীত অনাগত আলোকে উজ্জ্বল জীবনে চঞ্চল একই আনন্দ তরঙ্গ বিপুল তরঙ্গরে বিপুল তরঙ্গরে সব গগন বেলিয়া মগন করি অতীত অনাগত আলোকে উজ্জ্বল জীবনে চঞ্চল একই আনন্দ তরঙ্গ বিপুল তরঙ্গরে তাই দুলিছে দিন কর চন্দ্র তারা দুলিছে দিন কর চন্দ্র তারা চমকি কম্পিছে চেতনা ধারা দুলিছে দিন কর চন্দ্র তারা চমকি কম্পিছে চেতনা ধারা আকুল চঞ্চল নাচে সংসার আকুল চঞ্চল নাচে সংসার কুহরের হৃদয় বিহঙ্গ বিপুল তরঙ্গরে বিপুল তরঙ্গরে তাই দুলিছে দিন কর চন্দ্র তারা দুলিছে দিন কর চন্দ্র তারা চমকি কম্পিছে চেতনা ধারা আকুল চঞ্চল নাচে সংসার আকুল চঞ্চল নাচে সংসার কুহরের হৃদয় বিহঙ্গ বিপুল তরঙ্গরে বিপুল তরঙ্গরে।
The next one. So this is called Rag Purvi, which is the kind of which creates a connection between the dusk, the time of the dusk where the daylight is ending and the evening is emerging. So this is a rag on that. The song is, the words is again celebrating the unison with the Supreme Being.
Mahavishnu একাকী ভ্রমি বিষয়ে ভ্রমি বিষয়ে মহাবিশ্বে মহাকাশে মহাকাল মাঝে তুমি আছো বিশ্বনাথ অসীম রহস্য মাঝে তুমি আছো বিশ্বনাথ অসীম রহস্য মাঝে নীরবে একাকী আপন মহিমা লীলায় মহাবিশ্বে মহাকাশে মহাকাল মাঝে অনন্ত দেশকালে অগণ্য এ দীপ্ত লোকে তুমি আছো মুরে চাহি আমি চাহি তোমা পানে অনন্ত দেশকালে অগণ্য এ দীপ্ত লোকে তুমি আছো মুরে চাহি আমি চাহি তোমা পানে স্তব্ধ সর্ব কোলাহল শান্তি মগ্ন চরাচর স্তব্ধ সর্ব কোলাহল শান্তি মগ্ন চরাচর এক তুমি তোমা মাঝে আমি একা নির্ভয়ে মহাবিশ্বে মহাকাশে মহাকাল মাঝে আমি মানব একাকী ভ্রমি বিষয়ে ভ্রমি বিষয়ে মহাবিশ্বে মহাকাশে মহাকাল মাঝে
The next one is on late night melody. This is called Malkaus. You can see the meaning of the words here.
আনন্দ ধারা বহিছে ভুবনে আনন্দ ধারা বহিছে
last one. This is actually from the Rig Vedas, but Tagore set the music to this. Sangachadvam sangvadadvam sangvomana sijanatam sangachadvam sangvadadvam sangvomana sijanatam samano mantra samiti samani samano mantra samiti samani samana manasahajita mesha Sangachadvam sangvadadvam sangvomana sijanatam samaniva akuti samana hridayaniva samaniva akuti samana hridayaniva samanamastu mana yathava susahasati sangachadvam sangvadadvam sangvomana sijanatam sangachadvam sangvadadvam sangvomana sijanatam. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sudeshna ji. That was really a spiritual experience for me. Today it's like very around 5 o'clock. We are all very tired, but still I really understood what spiritual experience is. I was just closing my eyes and listening to her. So we are just leaving our body and mind, and what is listening is our inner soul. There is no exhaustion there, right? So it's just peace and silence and happiness. That is the whole objective of this program. We realize the beauty of all these performing arts and how we transcend and reach that happiness, bliss. Thank you so much. And I invite Rekuji for the final thing, the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sumita. Like I said, this was the first time we conducted this program. It was an idea by Aparna, and we didn't know what to expect. We reached out to the community, and the community really helped us, and people like Sudeshna, they just wholeheartedly agreed to come and perform for us, which we are truly grateful for. And it was the same across all the people who performed from this morning. Everybody was very enthusiastic, passionate, and they just wanted to do this. And we are truly thankful for all of them, for bringing all the students who could come and demonstrate. So we are truly enriched by all these experiences. I want to thank all the performers. I want to thank all of you for making it here. I would like to talk to you people here before you leave, if you have a minute. I would like to know how you found out about this, how you came to this. Truly, we are thankful that you all came. We wish there were more people who could benefit from this, but We've recorded this, and hopefully, like I said, a lot of good things happened today. A lot of ideas, a lot of different thoughts came from different people, and I think we have captured everything. We want to preserve it on our SSVT archives for sure, and whoever benefits from it, so be it. So that's our goal. Once again, I want to thank the artists, the audience. I want to thank Sumita here, who absolutely, she deserves it. I wish there were more people here. It was, like I said, it was a joint program between education and cultural, but believe me, the education committee did way more than what the cultural people did. We were just tied up with a lot of things, so we could not, but Sumita diligently did all the detailed work corresponding with all the artists, performers, setting up the program, all of that. So huge round of thanks to Sumita here for doing this. Same with Ratish, who has been here since last evening. We set up, and this morning as well. There were several cultural committee volunteers who came through and helped us. Thank you all so much. Definitely, yeah. Aparna, once again, thankfully you're here. So great idea, and I think maybe we should probably do this as an annual thing. This worked out to be really nice, and I hope more people take advantage of it. And as I always do, I thank all the people, the maintenance people who helped us set up the projector, the chairs, the stage, everything. The temple management for helping us, allowing us to do all these kinds of programs. So thank all of them, and we hope to see you all again, if in another program soon. But thank you for today, and good evening.